King Osiris' fatherhood. At noon, Robert high, like only he could. The fables are bizarre but good. It's Smith understood.
Yeah.
I'm back in my chair, baby.
Yeah. Hey, everyone. Thanks for joining us for a new episode of Myth Understood. And this
Do
is
you think the song gave it away?
that it's a new episode of Myth Understood. Well, if they're listening to it, it's probably a new episode for them. But this is our first episode with Egyptian mythology. And as Sarah alluded to, she is back in her position as
Doofus.
learning, and I am in my position as a researcher and all of the above.
All of the above.
So I'm really excited to jump into this. Like as the song said, that was of course the spectacular Zen Zenith.
Yay!
Who has
A round of
sung,
applause for Zen Zenith. Our studio audience is going wild.
who has sung every theme song thus far. Not only sung but also made the music, and of course Jake, our producer, was a contributing lyricist. He may or may not have written all of the lyrics for this one. For all songs. Okay. I don't know what you guys do when you get together. And
He doesn't know he's the talent. Ugh. What do you do behind closed doors?
So anyway, but yeah, we're getting ready to jump into Egyptian mythology, and so I guess I'll start the way that I start all introductions to mythology and ask you, Sarah, what is your experience with Egyptian mythology? Like, what are you familiar with? What are you not familiar with?
Of all mythologies, I learned a little bit of Egyptian mythology in school. And of like all things I learned in school, I've retained nothing.
Okay. Well, great. Do you remember any of like their names?
Ra, 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 ah, ah.
Okay, yeah, you got Ra.
Tiberius.
Oft forgotten. Well, for me, it was like I was so consumed by Greek mythology as a kid, and like it ate me and spit me out on the other end.
Mm-hmm.
And when I finished the family-friendly book that I had, I was looking for how can I find more mythology? Like, what's next? What else is out there?
What's the next high?
Yeah, and I discovered Egyptian mythology. I feel like it's a pretty common stepping stone. I think you either step into Norse or you step into Egyptian. Would you just equate Egyptian to a pile of shit?
You did.
How did I do that?
I got there first.
Okay. So I am pretty I'm a connoisseur in the way that I was with the Greek mythology before.
I love the way you talk about yourself as an 11-year-old.
Yeah, of course.
Just a regular bell.
I
You want this book again?
I've already read it twice, but yes.
If you like it all that much, keep Edith Hamilton's Greek mythology.
Oh, thank you. Will do. Yeah. So I was really enchanted by the culture and the depiction of the gods. I loved that, unlike the Greek gods, they appeared in many different colors.
Yes,
they have
their artwork that exists and is recreated is fantastic.
Yeah, and they're and not only that, but they had animal heads, and that was really exciting.
Another culture that knows how awesome cats are.
Yeah, not only cats, crocodiles, baboons. They're bird-headed people, jackal-headed people.
Jackal-headed people.
Jackal-headed, yeah. And that's just part. And this really worked for me as a kid because I was, I didn't know what a furry was as a kid.
Why would you?
But my friends and I would draw animal people hybrids.
Yeah,
it was
Animorphs. That was regular in the 90s.
Anthros is what we called them.
But the books, Animorphs.
Oh, yeah. Well, I didn't read the books Animorphs.
No one did, but we know the artwork.
We saw the cover. Yeah, they're all over the library.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I was thinking as I was driving here to record this
How
that
cool it would be to fuck a furry.
no, well, no. I was thinking that like now during this pandemic, like this is the time to be a furry because
Go on.
you're completely covered from head to toe.
Yeah.
It's like you're in a big furry hazmat suit. Like furries should be the only ones allowed outside.
Wait, don't they have their mouths exposed?
No.
Why?
Well, maybe some do, but I'm only basing this off of like I went to college with a furry.
They're completely covered?
Yeah, it's like a mascot costume. Like head to toe. And I remember she was a furry because it was Halloween and they were dressed like a furry, but they were wearing hooker clothes on top of it. And I was like, wow, your costume's really inventive. You're like a whore werewolf. And she was like, no, I'm just a whore. And I was like,
whoa.
oh, okay.
I'm just a whore.
I'm just a whore. Yeah. So that's that encompasses my love. We got into furries, and so now you know why I love Egyptian mythology.
Mm-hmm.
So I thought that like when we began talking about ancient Greece and the origins of some of classical Greek mythology,
the Titans.
Yeah, that it was thought to be inspired by the eruption of the volcano Thera in the Mediterranean, or what is today the island of Santorini.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And that eruption occurred in roughly 1600 BCE. This seems to curtail the development of the Minoan civilization in Crete, and their civilization rises in 220 BCE and then falls out of power in 1500, which is around the time when Thera erupts. So that was basically why people are like, okay, yeah, that's the Greeks were trying to explain this massive eruption. That's where their mythology maybe comes from.
Okay.
Egyptian is older than all of this.
Oh yeah.
So you can't say like, oh, that eruption that happened like is what affected their mythologies. Everything's a little bit more confusing. Everything's a little bit more mysterious. Egyptian is sexier and hidden. The Egyptian civilization is older than the Greek civilization in the sense of like, yeah, there were people everywhere, but like ancient Egypt was the things that were happening there in terms of like people creating like a real civilization as opposed to just like traveling tribes or like small pockets of people.
They
were doing that sooner.
A society that recorded things quicker.
Yeah.
Which is how you prove you've been around.
Exactly.
Sarah was here. I write it on every wall.
Yeah, they were creating villages, they were farming, and they were creating the cornerstones of their future culture and dynasties as early as 5500 BCE.
Oh!
The age of this culture is part of the reason that mythology is less dense and refined and defined compared to the Greeks, because it just, when shit's older, it's harder to dig up. There's a lot of variance in the myths and also disagreements between Egyptologists about how the language is even supposed to be read.
Uh-oh. So this sounds like ways that you could be attacked on Twitter.
Because because
if
no one knows
there's
how
different
to
ways to pronounce it, people will tell you did it wrong.
Oh yeah, I'll get into that in a moment.
Oh, Daddy.
And this is the first time I said Egyptologist too. And speaking of daddy, I'm segueing this together.
I'm reading your mind.
There is a famous Egyptologist who shares his name with my dad. Yes, Robert Bianchi.
Yeah.
Is like one of the world's foremost Egyptologists.
Wow.
And I think it would be really fun and amazing if somehow for one of these episodes we could have my dad Skyping in on one side or Zooming, or I don't know them technologies, but having
doing on TikTok.
But if I could get both Robert Bianchis on an episode and we could have dueling Bobs.
Maybe that is what broke this multiverse in the first place.
It
Maybe
might
they
have
got
been.
together at the same time and split us into this horrible simulation we're living in.
Yeah, that'd be wonderful.
No, that's
That would be wonderful.
okay. Maybe it'll mend this.
Yeah, I think it'll fix it.
Mm-hmm.
So who the Egyptians are as people, and why we're dedicating this episode to Egyptology, because who they are, as with the Greeks and the Romans and the Norse, it all helps paint this whole picture surrounding their mythology, like basically what was important to them, what was happening in the world around them, and why did they use this particular mythology to attempt to explain what's going on around them. So this will be less of a myth episode and more of a no, this happened.
You got
episode.
a world build, baby. You got a world build.
So I'm going to guess that probably one of the first things you learn in school about ancient Egypt, aside from pyramids, is what was the first thing you like? What's another like just like basic fact about Egyptians?
Like, oh my God, did they teach you like the Moses stuff in school? They're not supposed to.
No, I'm not, I'm not alluding to the relationship between ancient Egypt and the Bible in this moment.
Okay. What else about them? Oh well, yeah, mummies, baby.
Mummies. Okay. Aside from that,
mummification.
You went from mummies then to mummification.
Well, it's a whole process.
Okay. Well, I was alluding to the Nile,
The Sphinx,
the Nile River.
Oh,
that's just
yeah,
what they lived around. Yeah.
Denial.
The denial. Yeah. The civilization would not have thrived as it did without the Nile River and the Nile River Delta. Due to its dependable seasonal flooding, settlers could count on being able to continually farm the region without having to like pick up and migrate like other parts of northern Africa.
Yeah.
The river's predictability and the fertile soil allowed the Egyptians to build an empire on the basis of agricultural wealth, which is pretty important. And it's worth noting that although the Nile was directly responsible for either the good or bad fortune experienced by the Egyptians, they did not worship the
river.
That was a wombo of worship and deify.
Yeah.
Worship the Nile itself. It was just like, oh yeah, that's just the Nile. They thanked specific gods for good fortune, but the Nile just like, unlike the Greeks, how they were like, hey, that river over there is a god.
Mm-hmm.
They were like, no, that's just our river. They didn't have they either didn't have a name for the river at all, so they just called it river, or they called it this is the first word I'm gonna butcher.
Yes.
It's AUR.
AUR.
Our.
Owl. That's owl.
Which is thought to be ancient Egyptian for black, and that word they would call it black because there's a lot of black sediment that's left by the river.
Okay. It checks out.
The term Nile is not Egyptian origin, but rather
Nile's crane.
It's Greek, and the Greek word is Nilos, which means valley. So like, and this is like a lot of what it is attributed to ancient Greek or ancient Egyptian things. It's like named that way because Western people were studying ancient Egypt and they were using Greek and Latin and Western languages to apply them to this group of people. So like names, again, just like names, everything is sort of subjective.
Right. It's like saying that over there, that Mount Washington's been around for 3,000 years.
Yeah.
It wasn't always that.
So being next to the Nile, they developed some of the earliest forms of irrigation, and the technology allowed them to use the Nile's waters not only for farming, but to divert floods away from settlements. They also could provide some clean drinking water, and irrigation was so important to them that it was like featured, like the mechanics of it would be like featured in their drawings and like attributed to like really important things. Like they would put it on like the side of a wall, like, oh, just look at that irrigation system. And most famously, irrigation is featured on the head of a mace that belonged to the Scorpion King.
The Rock?
Yes, the Rock, that Scorpion King. And it's roughly dated from about 31,000 BC. The mace head depicts the Scorpion King himself cutting into a ditch, which is part of the grid of the basin irrigation.
Okay.
So clearly he was a king that was not above manual labor.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I never thought he would be.
Yeah, he seems like a real man of the people.
He's a scorpion.
Do you remember the end of that movie?
I didn't watch that movie.
Or was it the end of that movie, or was the end? It was the end of one of the Mummies where the Scorpion King revealed itself, because the Scorpion King itself was like a separate like origin movie.
Yeah. Because it was like the Mummy 4, 7.
Yeah, and he was there, and it was like really good CG for the time.
Oh, I don't remember it being good.
Yeah, it was pretty bad. Man, when I saw the movie The Scorpion King, it was The Rock, and then the love interest was Kelly Hu, and I had a big crush on Kelly Hu because of that movie.
Oh man, everyone in the first Mummy movie is I'd be furries with all of them.
You'd be furries with
all of them.
That's good.
Even fake Billy Zane.
Oh, fake Billy Zane?
The guy that looks like Billy Zane, and he looks like Billy Zane so much that Billy Zane later starts playing his parts in the spin-offs.
Yeah, I get it. So, as they were farmers, Egyptians developed the sickle for harvesting grains.
Oh yeah.
Very early, and the sickle also became part of the iconography for Egyptian gods. So you might have seen it, like,
Seen it.
Yeah, they're like their arms are crossed on the tombs, and one of the hands is holding a sickle. Other inventions that followed were the creation of finely woven linen fabric in 4400 BC. Faience, which were like the earliest known glazed ceramic beads, and you might attribute like these glazed ceramic beads to like if you get a cheap wig of Cleopatra for Halloween, they'll usually have like the beads dangling in the hair. Like they're really into beads. They also, in around 3500, Senet was invented, and Senet is the oldest confirmed board game ever made. So they had time for leisure if they were making board games.
Yes.
If you're wondering, like many details of ancient Egypt, people can't seem to agree on what the rules of Senet are. But it's been called the game of passing. And it has pieces similar to chess, but there's like 8 of them. And it might play a bit like checkers in that it's the game of passing. So you're just like trying to pass the other person to cross the board.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So
Great.
that's about it. And they would make these out of like ceramic boxes and things like that. So that's all I got on that. In 3400, they appeared to have domesticated the donkey, and they also...
This is BC still?
This is still BC.
Before coffee?
Before coffee. Oh, yeah, no one was drinking coffee in Egypt back then. They also developed cosmetics at about the same time, so maybe there's a relationship between donkeys and cosmetics.
Go on.
That's it. That's the end of that thought there. Let's talk about that makeup, though. Egyptians were very fond of eyeliner.
Yes, they were.
They loved eyeshadows in dark colors, including blue, red, and black.
Also hot.
They crushed gemstones and used them to decorate their faces, mainly on the lips and around the eyes. Fun fact, when I was in Athens, I actually saw a display of these ancient gemstone powders, and they look dazzling in person. The colors are really beautiful and vibrant.
Why is it bad to smear it on your face then? Full of lead?
They're not all bad to smear on your face,
Okay.
but they just didn't know that some were bad.
Full of lead.
Yeah. So Egyptians popularized the classic red lip in the West because they were putting red powders on their lips. They applied red tinted with a color they extracted from a stone called fucus algin. Fucus algin.
Yeah.
They used some iodine in it and bromine mannite, and frequent use resulted in serious illness. They also made lipsticks with shimmering effects that were made using a pearlescent substance found in fish scales.
Oh.
And these that substance that's in fish scales is still used to make the shimmering products in makeup.
Hey, if it ain't broke.
Yeah.
But this was also a thing. This was like a unisex thing, right? Like a thing
Oh,
of
yeah.
wealth, like in the France.
Mm-hmm. And
Back
it
in the
might have
day.
originated because they're farmers. They're working out in the hot sun in the fields. They're
Sunscreen at
out on
first.
sea. Yeah, they used castor oil for their skin to help it when it was damaged,
Mhm.
and they used coal classically as an eye protectant and to help them see when the sun's blazing in their eyes.
Oh, like underneath, like
Yeah.
a football
Mhm.
game.
Yeah. Now there's something else that's pretty synonymous with the Egyptians, and that is papyrus.
Ah, yes.
And
That's your favorite font, isn't it?
my favorite font. Yeah. Yeah. I even wrote that in my notes. Not the font we all see written on the walls of artisan coffee houses and spas.
He points it out every time he sees it.
Yeah. But the thick paper-like substance that Egyptians used as a writing substance, it was made from the mashed pith, aka like the center soft part of like tuberous plants. And it's the part of the actual plant that's like called papyrus.
Ah.
And this is something, so that part I was like, oh yeah, that part I knew while I was refreshing. The part that I did not know, which I thought was really interesting, was that it lasted really well in Egypt's arid climate.
Mm-hmm.
But when taken to Europe's more humid climate, it became very susceptible to rot.
Are you telling me these white folks came in and just literally destroyed people's history?
I mean, yes, but what I'm
It doesn't sound like them.
but the history of this is more like Egypt had a relationship with Rome.
Oh, so sending correspondence even.
Yeah.
Okay.
So like they would be like, okay, well, we have these documents. That's great. And these documents would last for hundreds of years in Egypt.
Yeah.
And as soon as they would get to like Rome, they would last like a couple of decades and then mold and fall apart.
Or was it the first sort of Mission Impossible correspondence? Like this message, if you choose to accept this mission, Caesar, this message will self-destruct in 15 years.
15 years. That's great. Oh, I better read this quick then. And then like 15 years later, I never read that. Damn it. So, and of course, on this papyrus was the form of writing that Egyptians became known for, which is their hieroglyphics.
Yes.
Hieroglyphics were combined. They combined symbols and alphabetic elements with a total of over 1,000 distinct characters.
Oh, geez.
And this is new. This was news to me. That it could be written like as we know it, but also in like a fancy cursive like version for religious documents.
Is it just super like slanted to one side?
Yeah.
With lots of loopy loops.
It's all connected. No one knows what's going on. It later was developed into the Phoenician alphabet, which then influenced the creation of the Greek alphabet, which influenced the Roman alphabet. So we wouldn't have our alphabet as we know it if it wasn't for Egyptian hieroglyphics.
Thank you.
The decipherment of hieroglyphic writing, despite the civilization having been around for so long, did not happen until the 1820s by Jean-Francois Champollion.
He doesn't sound Egyptian.
No, he is French. And he was able to decipher it with help of the Rosetta Stone.
Oh, the program.
Yeah, the program. Yeah. The program which the ancient rock is based off of. And this is where I was going to take the moment to address something that has been a trend in our series thus far, which is the pronunciation issue. Is that in my reacquaintance with Egyptian mythology, I came across several passages which very clearly stated the pronunciation of anything deciphered from hieroglyphics, including but not limited to Egyptian deities, is speculative and entirely debatable. This is an ancient African culture that was unearthed by European powers. Thus, modern French and British linguists applied their worldview of phonetics to an unknown language that
And their
seems to
stupid
frequently
accents.
omit vowels. So vowel sounds are sort of guessed. So for the sake of this podcast, I'm aiming for the popular pronunciation of these deities.
What's popular is not always right.
Exactly. Yeah.
So just condense that, put it in a tweet, and pin it to the top of Twitter because they don't care. They will come for you.
They will. It'll just be I'll put the whole thing on and it'll just be a thread. Part 4.
And a threat.
Anyway, so back to papyrus. It ended not decaying in Egypt because I had a segue for that.
Oh shit.
Speaking of decay,
don't look at my face.
conditions of Egypt's climate may have been the causer for Egyptians' unique relationship with death, which is maybe something else that is one of these things that we just know about Egypt. Scholars believe that the importance of the physical body and its preservation originated before the onset of widespread cultural religion. So there was something else happening first. But for some reason, while cremation was really popular in the surrounding civilizations, Egyptians were just not into it.
Yeah.
Some scholars attribute this to a fear that the bodies would rise again if mistreated after death. Others just thought about like, hey, if like their relationship is dependent on this like river, maybe they didn't want to be putting human ashes like anywhere near and on these floodplains where it would like be like integrated into their crops. Maybe there was like a belief that like there was something innately toxic with like burned human remains.
Well, I bet it can probably go down to the basic biology too of like, you know, why we had wakes and the bells on coffins and stuff. Like there's probably a couple times where like, yeah, the guy's dead. Let's get rid of the body, and someone starts twitching like, fuck.
Yeah. Yeah, that happened.
So let's take out all of his organs.
Let's exactly. Yeah. Oh, I'll get to that too.
Let's end this once and for all.
Early bodies were just buried in shallow pits. But even in these like old shallow pits, they would find burial goods. Sometimes multiple people and animals were placed in the same grave. And maybe in a case of trying to like outdo other people, over times the graves became more and more complex. A body would be placed in a long wicker basket.
You have to answer 3 riddles to get into this grave.
I mean, almost, yeah. Then later in a wooden or terracotta coffin, and finally, what we know today as sarcophagi or sarcophaguses. The inclusion of goods suggests that during the more ancient period, there was a belief in an afterlife, and that one had to pay their way to get in, sort of like the coins in that the Greeks put in their mouths or their eyes
so far back
into the river Styx. Well, I think it's also just like classism of like believing like
only the rich get to go.
Yeah, because common people might not have enough to be allowed into the afterlife, and the only way they would be allowed into the afterlife
they know someone on the list
is if they or if they dedicated a life of servitude to someone who did have the means or the ability to get into heaven, and they would say, "Oh, well, you can come with me to serve me in the afterlife."
What a joy!
What a joy, right? And the pharaoh, of course, was always allowed, regardless. By the time of the period known as the Old Kingdom in 2600, rulers were building the very first pyramids for their tombs, surrounded by smaller tombs for high-ranking officials. This is when the bodies started to become mummified, wrapped in linen bandages, sometimes covered even in molded plaster. They'd be placed in these stone sarcophagi, and this is also where archaeologists start seeing canopic containers, which held their internal organs separately.
Yes.
The 4 most frequently seen canopic containers were made to look like certain deities. There was Hapi, who was the baboon-headed god representing the north. And what organ do you think Hapi's
Brain.
No.
Oh. Well, that's about as north as I go.
Um,
Tongue.
no. I guess we shouldn't just play a guessing game here. Happy's contained the lungs.
Okay.
And was protected by the goddess Nephthys. Happy is often used interchangeably with the Nile god Hapi, but they were actually different gods.
Oh, well.
You know.
Happy's
It's a popular name.
yeah. Happy's Poppy.
Duamatef, the jackal-headed god represented the east, contained another human organ. I'm just going to make you guess once for each.
Stomach.
Yeah.
Duh. Everyone knows that.
Because the east represents the stomach.
Yeah. I'm always hungry when I go to New York.
The stomach was protected by the goddess Neith. Imsati, the human-headed god, was representing the south and contained what organ?
Brain.
No.
So help me God.
It was the liver and was protected by the goddess Isis. Finally,
Yes, Isis.
oh boy, help me with this name. Qebehssenuef.
Keberfiler.
Kebeseniev. I'm going to have to learn how to pronounce that one. The falcon-headed god represented the west, and his jar contained what?
Eyeballs.
The intestines, and was protected by the goddess Serget, or Serket, rather.
They didn't take any of my favorite organs.
Egyptians did not understand the importance of the brain.
Neither do Americans.
They pulled it out through the nose of the dead and threw it away.
Yeah, get rid of this.
Yeah, you don't need your brain in the afterlife.
Isn't it hard to get it out of the nose? Why not just cut the skull open?
They wanted to preserve the body because they felt like your soul would leave your body, and
then why get rid of the brain at all?
Because they didn't think it was important. They just thought it was like mush, like goo, and so they would like literally take like instruments, jab it up the nose, and like with a hook at the end, and like pull out the nose. I
don't understand that, because don't you ever, like, from reading or just like thinking too hard, you feel it in your head. You physically feel it. Like you.
I mean, maybe just people didn't. I don't know.
I feel like I know that I'm aware of what a brain does neurologically, but also like I feel very connected to mine. And
yeah.
I understand. Like I feel its function.
Well, the Egyptians thought that the heart, rather than the brain, was the organ of reasoning.
I mean, that makes sense too, because it overrides the brain a lot.
Yeah. Well, also, if you consider, like, if you're studying it and maybe you're coming from an abstract place without knowing anything, like your heart beats, and you can tell that your heart beats in the same pulsing sensation at points all over your body.
And your heart reacts,
including to your brain.
Things like,
yeah.
Pizza.
Pizza.
I'm getting excited.
Yeah. So the heart was left in the body. It was like the other ones, like, okay, we're gonna put these separately, but the heart was like, no, that's the first one that's going to be reactivated in the afterlife.
But then why take anything out?
To keep the body from rotting over time. They wanted to preserve the body as long as possible.
Yes.
So
when you come back to life, we'll give you this stuff back, obviously.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
It'll just go back in.
But you'll be 8 pounds lighter because that dumb shit we got out of your head.
Yeah. Perfect. Yeah. So the heart was required in the afterlife. It would testify to the goodness of the deceased. Therefore, it was left in place within the body. And if accidentally removed, because they didn't know what they were doing sometimes, it would be immediately sewn back. Like, oh shit. Put that heart back.
Oh, no. But see, even that shows they understand, like, associating things with organs. So I'm so confused about the brain.
Yeah. I mean, we're still learning.
Yeah.
One of the funerary practices followed by the Egyptian was preparing the body properly for the afterlife. Ka, the vital force within the ancient Egyptian concept of a soul, would not return to a deceased body if embalming was not carried out in proper fashion. So if you slip up and you sew the heart back in, you might just be like, oh well, this one's
ruined.
in this case, the body, like if it was not properly done, the body would decay and become unrecognizable, which rendered the afterlife unattainable for this deceased person because
Oh.
it wouldn't be able to recognize them anymore. If proper precautions weren't taken, damnation would occur. Damnation meant that Egyptians would not experience the glories of the afterlife and instead would face endless torment. So they had a concept of hell.
So, just so I can get this straightened out, the afterlife, when you die, you don't go straight to the afterlife.
No.
It's maybe you get to come back in your flesh sack
Yeah.
and we'll give you your organ. So, to their knowledge, no one ever went to the afterlife?
Yeah, and this like tiptoes into more mythology than this episode is going to cover, because there are gods of funerary rites, there's gods of the underworld and the afterlife, and they are there basically sitting in judgment to allow you into these next great halls. But there is a waiting period.
There's a waiting period. Great.
Yeah.
There's a Valhalla.
Yeah. Yeah, except this one's more of a sad Valhalla. There's no drinking while you
There's
wait.
no goat of endless beer tits?
No, there's not that.
Oh.
Definitely different cultures there. Part of the reason that we know so much about Egyptians' relationship with death and the afterlife is that they wrote about it all the time. It was like
such sad girls.
yeah, they're super emo and they were really into death.
A lot of eyeliner, a lot of death
Yeah.
journals.
Most famously, the Book of the Dead is an ancient Egyptian funerary text, which was used from the beginning of the New Kingdom, which was around 1550 BC to around 50 BCE.
And what's in it? Just names of dead people?
It consists of a number of magic spells
Oh, I love it.
intended to assist a dead person's journey through the Duat, which is like their name of the underworld.
And that's why they use it in The Mummy.
Yeah, and then the underworld, and then further into the afterlife. There's like it's a whole process of moving on.
Okay. So like a DMV.
Yeah. The most complete Egyptian Book of the Dead is the Papyrus of Ani. Ani was an Egyptian scribe, and it was discovered by a Sir E.A. Wallace Budge in 1888. And like so many things in Egyptian history, you can see it today in the British Museum in London.
Boo. Give it back.
So and since it's papyrus, they gotta keep like turn on the dehumidifier
Oh, shit.
at all times.
But I have like 4 backup generators, right?
Yeah. Egypt attained its first sustained peak of civilization during the Old Kingdom in 2600. The ancient city of Memphis served as the capital during much of this period. This period is
Love imagining Egyptian Elvis right now.
Yeah, it was right near I just forgot where Elvis is from.
Memphis.
No, he's from it's like when you Graceland.
Oh, Graceland.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This period is where the classic polytheistic mythology really started to be chronicled. The Old Kingdom was like that was the part of history where the reigns of great pyramid builders of the 4th dynasty, among them King Sneferu, who who
Ran into a snafu.
Yeah, he perfected the art of pyramid building on the backs of slaves or ancient aliens, depending on who you ask. And the kings Khufu, Khafre, and Menkaure, who constructed the pyramids of Giza.
All related?
Yeah, of course. Also hanging out during this dynasty was Imhotep, the royal vizier of King Djoser, who notably created a lot of problems for Brendan Fraser. So that was the Old Kingdom. The Middle Kingdom lasted from about 2050 to 1710 BC. Egypt was divided at the beginning of this period between Upper and Lower Egypt. If you look at a map, Lower is towards the Mediterranean and Upper is further south, so it's sort of confusing.
It was confusing back then.
Yeah, they didn't know which way.
Throw away the brain. We're up here.
Yeah, they didn't know which way the poles would be decided to be situated. The capital of the lower city is Thebes, which is in no relation to Greek Thebes, but of course these cities get named by Greeks.
Great.
The regions were unified under the reign of Mentuhotep II in the 11th dynasty. And the last period where the Egyptian gods existed as we know them was the New Kingdom, also known as the Egyptian Empire. And this lasted and this is like, because it's the newest, it's like what we know the most about. It's roughly...
In which time period were dinosaurs?
None of these Egyptian time periods.
I don't think so.
Maybe some remaining plesiosaurs.
Okay, thank you.
This lasted from roughly 1550 to 1069, and this period had some of Egypt's most famous pharaohs. Like, if you can think of it, this is where they're from.
King Tut.
Yeah, Tutankhamun, Ramses, Amenhotep, Queen Hatshepsut.
Queen Hot Shit what?
Hat. She.
Hot she.
Psut. Hatshepsut.
Okay.
Hatshepsut.
I like it.
And this period also had a brief moment of monotheism during the reign of Amenhotep IV, aka Akhenaten, and his more famous wife, Queen Nefertiti. And this god was called Aten, but I'll cover him. He'll get his own episode. So if Sarah, hearing those two queens perked your ears up, this is basically my understanding of the role of women in ancient Egypt. Women could be pharaoh, provided that their limes, the limes that are in their blood, but that are removed during embalming.
Yeah, of course. They knew about those, not the brain.
Women could be pharaoh, provided that their bloodlines were deemed pure.
Love it.
Egyptian custom dictated that a pharaoh who was considered one of the gods could not marry a mortal. So Queen Hatshepsut was very inbred, and thus her bloodline was super pure.
Yeah.
And she was allowed to lead because of that. She married her brother. So yeah, that's what you do. The common woman's role as a mother and wife still came first in Egyptian society, but they were allowed to make money and work.
Oh my God. Egypt's getting hotter and hotter.
Some professions included weaving, perfume making, and entertainment.
Okay.
They could also own businesses, own and sell property, serve as witnesses in court cases.
What?
And unlike most women in Northern Africa and the Middle East during the time period, they were permitted to be in the company of men without like fear of being stoned because they were doing that. They could also escape bad marriages by divorcing and remarrying.
Holy shit.
And women were entitled to 1/3 of the property that their husbands owned. So all in all, not too bad for the time period.
Not too bad for before coffee time period.
Yeah. And before coffee time period. Of course, slavery was still all over the place.
Yeah. That's where they lose us.
Yeah. Egyptians, additionally, and this is something else that I put in here because I knew you would like it, Egyptians loved and respected the power and beauty of animals.
Yes.
With special attention to domesticated felines who helped keep their grain storage free from vermin.
Yeah.
So that's basically what I have. I mean, that's such a whirlwind, but like that is like just sort of setting the stage, the introduction of.
Yeah, we know that we have a lot of dynasties to go through.
Yeah, we've got dynasties to go through, and a lot of that amount of time also means a lot of conflicting beliefs. That means that I'm going to be giving you a lot of options. Like, it could have happened like this. It could have happened like that.
Yeah. I don't like facts.
Yeah. Well, you're not. If you're here for facts, you come to the wrong place.
I want to hear more about the cats, but you put your iPad away, so I guess that's all you got.
No, well, so there are several cat lady goddesses, and
so we'll get to that.
Yeah, we'll get to that for sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
And Am I one of them?
You're gonna be tired of how much you hear about cats at the end of this.
Bullshit. Try me, son. Yeah, I'm excited. I think the little that I know, this will just color it in. Fill in those lines. Color in the lines.
Color in the lines, fill in the color.
Fill in the color.
Blank out the
Rip
line.
my brain out my head. It's just fluff buff. Oh, doctor, thank you so much for coming over. Oh, God.
Oh yeah, I came right away. I saw all the cats on the way here.
Yeah.
And is this about them?
No.
Should I start throwing them into fire?
No, my cats are fine. They eat the vermin.
Oh, right.
I actually called you over because I am having a splitting headache. It hurts so bad. I've been reading all day, and I see kind of fuzzy.
All right, yeah.
So
say no more. I know exactly what's going on here.
Yeah. If you have like pain medication or something.
All right. Well, so
I gotta rub all this lead-based makeup on myself and go. So I got a party to hit.
Well, my advice to you here is to lie down on this on your stone bed.
Yeah. And you have like a ice pack or a heating pad or something.
Yeah, and I'm going to place this on your heart because, as you know, if your head is hurting, it's totally your heart. You have nothing in your head.
Yeah.
You've heard that before, right?
I've heard it. I took it as an insult.
Mm-hmm. And probably just some of the sludge that's in your head is just whirling around too much.
Ooh. Yeah. Do you have any? Can you give me something for this?
I'm gonna give you this sharp stick. Up your nostril.
Oh, wait. Get it. That's gonna help.
Oh yeah. I mean, you definitely have. You have that the nothingness that's in your head needs to be removed right now.
Okay. Can you do it quick?
Yeah. You can just get in and out.
Okay.
In
1,
and out. 2, 3. Yep. You feel good already? Yeah? You ready to go? Yeah. Oh, aren't you a cute kitty? What noise is that?
The fire. You said you want to throw them in.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, there we go. Well, that was something.
Oh, cutie patooties. I'm so glad Paul's back in the telling chair and I'm back in the learning chair.
Yeah, what was your favorite thing that you learned today?
That my brain is mush.
Good.
I always knew it.
That's good. Well, on that note, I'm really excited to dive into this mythology as well, and we have more episodes on Egyptian mythology to come.
Me too?
Yeah. If you are a fan of this podcast and you are not yet following us on social media, you can find us at _mythunderstood on Twitter and Instagram. You can find Sarah on Twitter and Instagram at the Sarah Oliver.
Yep.
You can find me at the Paul Bianchi.
Yeah.
You can find the Dragon Wagon radio network that this podcast is a part of at It's Dragon Wagon.
What else can you find?
You can find so much. Jeez.
We got a fancy little Patreon that happens. We
do have a fancy little Patreon. You can find that on Patreon. So many things to find. Yeah, please just give us a shout out. If you're feeling happy, give us a shout out if you're feeling sad.
The bestest thing you can do if you love us is go to Apple iTunes and rate and review us. That helps people find us.
Mm-hmm.
We like to be found.
That's moral of the story. All right, night.
Night.
Hey there, Mythfits. This is producer of the show, Jake Lloyd here, co-founder of Dragon Wagon Radio. I just wanted to take a quick moment to tell you about my debut feature film, Pinch. Pinch is a story of two strangers brought together by the chance to own a rare and valuable sports collectible, but to do so, they're tasked with stepping out of their comfort zones and onto a baseball field. It's a story about love, family, how we define success, and how sometimes it's hard to look beyond our own insecurities. I made Pinch with no budget, no crew, just a ton of heart, and I am thrilled to finally share it with you. You can rent or buy it digitally on Amazon or watch for free on Prime Video. Visit pinchmovie.com and follow at pinchmovie Movie on Instagram for more info on this charming little movie that means the world to me. Thank you so much for listening to Dragon Wagon Radio and Myth Understood. I appreciate your time. Now let's hear that awesome little network stinger that comes at the end of each and every show. Hey, you know, the voice on that little network stinger, that's Tony Wayne, star of Pinch, now on Amazon. See what I did there? Okay, bye. I love you. Thank you so much. Pinchmovie.com.
It's Dragon Wagon.